This episode is brought to you by Airbnb. Hey, Bashi.
Hey, Sufi.
You like my hat?
I do. Jimmy Kimmel Live. Oh,
I'm wearing
big
a
fan.
Jimmy Kimmel Live hat.
I'm a big fan of that Jimmy Kimmel
Well,
Live.
you kind of work with him. You might actually work with him more than you work with me.
Well, not counting the podcast. Once you start factoring in the podcast.
Most of your television work is with Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, that's true.
You play Gavin Newsom on the show. It's an exceptional impression. People should go check it out on YouTube. Yeah. But yeah. So I'm wearing the hat because I want to support you.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, that's nice.
How is everything going with you?
Good. We're planning this wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday was sort of dedicated to full, like we're just going to work on stuff because we got to start checking off some boxes.
Right.
So we've made some progress. Feeling good. Yeah, looking forward to it.
What's the most stressful thing left you have to decide? Are there big decisions left to make?
Yeah, I mean, there's band, DJ.
Right.
Yes,
I will do it. Yes.
There's, we haven't rented all the chairs and plates and things like that. That has to be done.
Have we talked about how Mom forced your hand as far as best manning? Have we done that on the pod?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
That you have a best man at your wedding.
Oh, well, she didn't force my hand. She forced my hand in terms of when I asked you.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. She didn't say you need to have a best man. But we were, where were we? We were sitting around in New Hampshire.
At the Copper Door. Yeah, we were sitting at the Copper Door.
And, I had every intention of asking you probably in a one-on-one circumstance, the way you asked me, I believe.
Right.
Will you be my best man? And instead, over the bread that arrived to the table that Mom rolled her eyes at because she didn't think we needed bread, she was like, and what are you going to do for speeches? Do you have a best man? And I was sort of like, well, you were right across from me. And I was like, I'll ask you. And you got a little choked up.
I got a little choked up because I was so sad that Mom had ruined that moment. I was crying. But I was and we should say, I've talked about this. You gave one of the all-time great best man speeches. So
yeah, it was a good one.
You set a really high bar. And also, I'm going to assume you're going to let Dad have the mic. He gave one of the great dad speeches of all time.
Yeah. So looking forward to that.
The famous story about Dad's speech at my wedding is that he gave a great speech, a killer speech. Then you gave a speech that was, there were people at my wedding who said they had a second kid based on how good your speech was. They thought, we need to have, our only child needs a sibling based on how good your speech was. People went home and just started procreating based on how it was an aphrodisiac speech. Someone came up to Dad and said, oh my God, Josh's speech was so good. It made me cry. And Dad said, how do you think I feel? Before he talked, I had the best speech of the night.
In a way, it was sort of like, when you hosted the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and then the next day, we got Bin Laden.
That's true. And it stole my thunder. You were SEAL Team 6 to Dad's speech.
Yeah.
And it was certainly, I think you would agree, we should really get my in-laws on the podcast.
Yeah.
And Tom and Joanne are both great, but Tom especially, mostly because I feel we could do an entire episode with him and then find out later not one of it thing was true. Not that he's a liar. He just doesn't have the most reliable memory.
Yeah.
But he walked up, I think maybe after Dad, and Dad had it was a written speech.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also pretty off book. He wasn't, there was structure to it. There was themes.
He put in some time.
Tom just sort of ambled up, and let me just say, one of the most charismatic, lovely people in the world. And I have nothing but praise for my father-in-law. I remember he goes, I'll never forget when Lex and I went to Madrid, and then immediately got heckled by my wife, who said, we've never been to Madrid. It got off to what they say was a bad start.
Yeah. So yeah, I will say one of the things we're looking at for this wedding that you can rent along with, chairs and whatnot. They have these little lounge areas that you can rent. A couple couches, couple chairs. They set up sort of a little hangout spot. And we were looking at some of those, and most of them are themed. They're themed to specific albums. And there was one that has like a guitar that they would put somewhere. And I was like, man, if we get that, then Tom Ash is just going to sit on that couch with that guitar just plucking away.
1,000%. I mean, I say both of my in-laws are real pluckers because...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. My mother-in-law plays a ukulele. And she's in a quite famous all-women ukulele band.
The Ukuleles.
The Ukuleles. And so she's a real plucker. They just kind of walk around and they'll like tell you things, and they often are plucking while they're talking.
Yeah.
It's very endearing.
Yeah. I mean, I did say we're not getting that guitar for the wedding lounge area because as much as Tom might want to be there picking and a plucking.
Yeah. I guess everybody hates that they say I have an inappropriate nickname for my mother-in-law.
What's that?
Mother Plucker?
Yeah. That's inappropriate.
Well, that's very exciting. Yeah, so that's good that you didn't get the guitar. I think that's a solid move.
Yeah. Lots of decisions still to be made, but we got a little time here.
We also have a wonderful guest today, Simon Rich.
Such a good dude, such a funny writer. If you haven't ever dipped into, if you don't know his written work, it's worth a peek. It brings me such quick joy that it's he's really one of my faves. You know what? And again, I sometimes forget this. We always talked about how when we would go on road trips, we would listen to books on tape. Gene Shepard, who was sort of a humorist of his time, in much the same way Simon Rich is now, I would recommend if your parents and you're going on a road trip and you've got kids almost any age, Simon writes really, really funny, and I bet his books on tape in a car with kids would just be a delight to listen to. Yeah, I haven't done those yet, but that strikes me as a worthy pursuit.
Yes. So please enjoy this conversation with Simon Rich, everybody.
Family trips with the Myers brothers. Family trips with the Myers brothers. Here we go.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Of course.
It's so good to have you.
Nice
This
to
is
see you.
our dear friend, Simon Rich. How are you, Simon?
I'm good. I'm excited we're doing this during the summer because it feels like a very summer subject. And I'm having all of these sort of memories from these vacations that I haven't really excavated in decades.
That's
Hopefully
the best. That's what
hopefully
we want.
it'll be a happy excavation. Because you are, first of all, you are, in my head, you are what I always wanted a product of New York City to be. Like, you strike me as a person who is New York City. Everything about you is New York City. And yet I feel like you've had the most nature-centric vacations of almost anybody I know.
This will be a very stereotypical New York City vacation, I think, the story.
So what is because you grew up in the city,
Yes.
and was it always that you guys immediately went to nature when it was time to go somewhere?
Well, so I grew up in a extremely kind of classic New York City Jewish scene. And so the vacations were, you probably kind of know what my vacations were based on pop culture depictions of it. Because there's so many Jewish comedy writers who would write musicals and Seinfeld episodes about what our vacations were. So we did go to my brother and I did go to kind of a classic Jewish summer camp in Maine. which was its own hilarious a rite of passage. But the vacation we did was to Boca Raton, Florida,
Yes.
which has kind of been, I guess, best depicted on Seinfeld. I feel like the retirement complex is called Boca del Vista, I think, and that's basically where we were multiple times a year, visiting this kind of this extremely Jewish elderly community, and it would be my brother and I, my mother, and the other grandchildren of New York City Jews.
Yeah. And who were you there to visit specifically? Did you have grandparents there, or did you just want to go to where old people were?
We just were in the mood for a celery. We just really wanted a Dr. Brown's, and we said, you know what? We could take the 6 down to the Lower East Side, or we could just go to Fort Lauderdale. And it was my grandmother and my step grandfather. My grandmother was married 4 times.
Wow.
But I only knew the 4th, and she would try to tell me about the previous 3 while I was there. But then my grandfather would sort of emerge in the edge of the room, and she would change the subject. So I never really got to hear too much about the first 3. But I knew Al very well, and it was this Twilight Zone situation where everyone you saw was an elderly Jewish person.
And based on the fact that there were other New York kids there, I'm assuming you went down based on school breaks. So it was always the same kids each time you went?
Exactly. And it was really, Boca Raton vacations were really about one thing and one thing only for me, and that's street ball.
Okay, great. You have always been a kid who is both of the era you were born and also 50 years ago?
That's definitely true. I think in terms of interests, I was definitely like a child of the 90s, obsessed with a New York City child of the 90s, obsessed with the Patrick Ewing Knicks. In terms of physical height, I was more like a child from the 1650s. I was despite being like completely in love with basketball, obsessed with it, and devoted to it. Training every day as hard as I could for hours. I was in the 2nd or 3rd percentile for height.
Yeah, you classically disprove the theory that you can be whatever you want to be.
Absolutely. And I remember having that conversation, that frank conversation with another kid. And we had just sat through, I believe, like a self-esteem musical. And we were like, well, on our way to basketball practice. And I was like, I'm not sure that that's true. Well, we had 3 teams, because basketball was like the only sport in my school. It was everyone's favorite sport. It was so popular. There were 3 teams to accommodate all the players or self-identifying players. And there was the A team, the B team, and the C team, which was euphemistically called the Friday team.
Okay.
So I was on the Friday. I was a starting point guard for the Friday team, and the only way to describe the Friday team is that I cannot tell you what it looked like without using adjectives that are no longer socially acceptable to you. But the A team got the most, the A team got a lot of spectators.
Mm-hmm.
The B team had fewer spectators, and the C team, we had the most spectators, but not for the reasons that you would want. It was more of a P.T. Barnum style atmosphere. So I felt sort of like, I felt as an NBA aspirant, I felt like probably how like Bronny James felt when he entered like the transfer portal, in the draft.
Yeah.
It's like, they're not getting me.
Right.
And then Boca Raton came calling. And it was a different scene.
There's that famous story about like how Jordan didn't make his high school team, and like that, that gave him the drive to show everybody he was the best. I feel like there is a massive leap between not making your varsity team and being on the Friday squad.
Yes, but something about Boca Raton, all of that noise kind of just dissipated, and all of a sudden, my skills are very much in demand because the court that I went to was populated entirely by the extremely asthmatic, very small grandchildren of elderly Jews.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like the show. There was a popular show that I was also really into at this time called Nickelodeon Guts.
Okay.
So that was a show where basically children were attached to gigantic elastic like cords that allow them to do like incredible physical feats that they could never do in real life. So it felt sort of like being on Nickelodeon Guts, except instead of being aided by huge elastic bands, I was helped by the prevalent epigenetic Jewish disorders that surrounded me. So just by like having like slightly less bad asthma than other kids, I was suddenly, if not like a powerhouse, like definitely like a Hubert Davis or a role player.
Right.
Was this your brother? Did he have the same skill leap when he got down to Boca?
My brother was incredibly gifted athletically by the standards of my family.
Okay.
so he actually is 6 feet tall.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So he's by far the tallest person in my family. And he made the B team.
Oh wow.
I don't know how, to this day, I still think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
he was squarely in the B team. And I'd go to games. I'd see him there proudly sitting on the bench and be like, he made the B team bench. This is unbelievable.
For Jewish parents, that's right below doctor, is to make the B team.
Exactly.
And your brother's 4 years older, right? Just to establish?
Yes,
Gotcha.
He's 4 years. Yeah, so two of us, yeah. So the vacation would be my mother. My parents were divorced, so it'd be my mother taking me and my older brother to see the grandparents.
And when you say street ball, it is basketball that you're playing down there. It's not some weird like stick ball or fast pitch.
It depends on how you define basketball.
Okay.
is the answer to that question. It is a Boca Raton variant of basketball.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we're it's like 2-on-2, 3-on-3, a small court. We would say to ourselves that the basket was regulation height, but in hindsight, I don't know if like Mikey Greenbaum was like actually able to dunk.
Right.
Yeah, looking back.
So like maybe it wasn't quite 10 feet.
He
but
did drop off the map professionally after those Boca trips.
Yeah, for an 8th grader who could full on dunk after eating an entire tongue and pastrami sandwich.
Just because since you mentioned that, I do want to go back. Can you just explain for those who've never heard celery before? Explain what this soda is, because it's kind of beyond my comprehension.
It is a straight up celery-flavored soda. Full stop. Like just shove it in your mouth. Full on celery flavor.
Where do you get these? This is a Boca Raton special
or any Jewish deli, right?
Yeah, but it has to be a very Jewish deli.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to find it at the Jewish deli in Milwaukee. Like it's like Lower East Side, and I assume probably Boca Raton, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's so intense. And but it was the only like sugary thing really that we were allowed to have in the house, because my grandfather Al was a health nut.
Gotcha.
So it was celery or bust.
Yeah. Were there ever any retirees out on the court, or was it just the sort of grandchildren of these?
It was just the grandchildren on the basketball court, and these baffled grandparents dropping off their grandchildren who were obsessed with a sport that they knew nothing about. But it was packed because there was not a lot to do for these. I mean, there was the Jewish, like the tennis club.
Yeah.
There was a healthy pick of synagogues. The deli. But yeah, the court was kind of.
So it's not, again, you're not walking around Boca when you're a kid. You're basically stuck in the community that you have grandparents at. And was this hours and hours of basketball a day?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, no, I would play all day, every day like it was my job.
Was this a trip you anticipated? Were you excited about it?
I couldn't wait. I mean, it was like, what kind of sneakers am I going to wear? It was hard to find sneakers because they didn't make them in like child sizes, which I was still wearing through like 6th or 7th grade. But yeah, I absolutely could not wait.
Yeah. And was it a gated community? Did you have like bikes to get around, or did you have to be driven everywhere?
We had to be driven everywhere. Yeah, it was absolutely like suburban gated community next to a swamp. We had a pool, and an alligator would frequently end up in the pool. And my grandmother, this may not surprise you, my Jewish grandmother, Anita, Grandma Anita, as I called her, she was an anxious woman.
An outlier. What's known in the Jewish community as an outlier.
Yes. And she also, I want to make sure I describe this correctly. She would draw on her eyebrows, but she would draw them a little bit higher than she ought to have. And the net result was that she perpetually looked astonished.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look into a mirror and raise your eyebrows slightly,
right,
and then couple that with extreme anxiety and a Great Depression upbringing, you get a woman who's freaked out already, even before she sees an alligator in her pool.
Yeah.
My grandmother was terrified of cats, house cats, domesticated house cats. So her reaction to a house cat would be your reaction to an alligator.
Right. So now where are you going to go yeah.
Yeah. So she would scream for Al to take care of the situation. And Al would shuffle out to the pool and just kind of ineffectively like raise a fist and shake it.
Yeah. Right.
The alligator did
alligators
not.
hate that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the alligator would just kind of stare into the middle distance.
While he would do that, would she go back to the bathroom and draw her eyebrows even higher?
Exactly.
I feel like this is not getting across how scary this is.
So it was her pool. It wasn't the community pool.
Right. Yeah. It was the pool. It was the pool where I learned how to swim, which I think the alligators had something to do with me being motivated to learn.
I want to get out.
I was like, I don't like swimming and I don't like being in the water, but like I should be able to get to the edge of this thing.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break and hear from some of our sponsors.
Family Trips is supported by Airbnb. Hey, Bashi.
Yes, Sufi.
You know we have an annual trip.
Yeah, we sure do. We get a couple regular trips, but which trip are you talking about?
I'm talking about the fact that you and I and 10 of our closest college friends get together every September for our fantasy football draft.
Such a good trip.
Very little of the trip is about a fantasy football draft.
Yeah. I always feel a little nerdy saying we're going on a fantasy football draft, but we're going to hang out with our buddies.
Yeah, that's why I say it's a fantasy friendship draft. Would that make it less nerdy, or is that maybe worse?
No, I think it's charming. It's sweet.
So this year for our fantasy friendship draft, we have a fantasy location booked. And it's all thanks to Airbnb. We found a place that has enough space for all of us and enough bedrooms for all of us and has a lot of outdoor activities, a fire pit. There's a fire pit, Pashi.
There's a fire pit. I want to say there's a volleyball court.
Yep.
There's a pickleball court. There's a lot.
It's driving distance to a hospital that a bunch of 50-year-old guys are going to have to go to when we blow our ACLs.
Yeah.
But in general, it is so nice that it has all the things that we could not get with our group at a hotel.
Oh, absolutely not. Because what you want is you want to be able to hang out together for as long as you can, and then if it's time to go to bed, you go to bed, but everyone else is sort of in the same place. And one thing that we're sort of focused on trips like this is no new friends.
No new friends. We don't want to meet them. We don't want to make them. We're happy with who we are. And maybe you're someone who's thinking, you know what? My home could be a great get-together for old friends who are not looking to meet new people. You've put a lot of time, effort, and work into your home, and someone out there would probably love to experience it while they're traveling And then they would rave about how it was the highlight of their trip. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host. Support for family trips comes from Babbel. Hey, Pashi.
Yes, Sufi.
Immersion is the best way to learn a foreign language.
Just get all the way in there if you're going to learn it. Do you want to learn it or not?
Well, I got some bad news for you. I don't have time to immerse myself anymore.
You're not going to go to a foreign country and just live the life and the language?
No, which is why I'm leaning on the second best way to learn a language, Babbel.
Oh, yeah. Got to get Babbel.
And I'm really excited. I'm excited to have a conversation with people in a foreign language. You and I, we both lived in the Netherlands. I never learned Dutch because Dutch people just switch and speak English. Babbel, though, Babbel's going to force me to learn it.
That's right. They will, because they use real-life conversational skills in different languages. It's so easy to learn how to order food, ask for directions, speak to merchants without having to consult language apps while you're on your vacation.
And Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Real quick, though, Josh, how do you order a beer in Holland?
Een biertje, alstublieft.
Great work.
Mag ik
Babbel
een
has over
biertje?
16. Yeah, good. That's enough.
Kan ik een biertje hebben? Voor,
That's enough. Babbel has over 16 million. See, this, by the way, if you learned from Josh, you'd be so frustrated right now. Babbel's not going to frustrate you. And here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/trips.
Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/trips, spelled BABBEL.com/trips. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Here we go.
Did your mom look forward to these trips? I mean, obviously she's seeing her mother, and I'm assuming Al's not her father.
Right.
And do you think she's just, this is, at least I can bring my kids here and they will have stuff to do? Do you think she found it to be a relaxing week as a single mom?
I think so. I mean, my memory is really just my mother and my brother just reading for hours.
Mm-hmm.
So they would, my mother is like, she is a book editor. She would have, like 5,000 pages to read.
Right.
And with all this before iPad. So she would bring like a suitcase that just had like literally like reams and reams of paper. And these are the manuscripts that she wanted to read, was excited to read. So I remember her kind of sitting in the corner, just reading from sun up to sundown. And my brother was in the same boat, but with Stephen King.
Great.
Yeah. Did you feel guilted into reading, or were you sort of just standing in the corner like, can we go do something?
Yeah, I was very much like, because at that age, I didn't have the attention span to spend like a full day reading, even like the best issue of Mad Magazine.
Right.
would have me for an hour, maybe. But at a certain point, it's time to hoop.
Right.
Yeah, you got to hoop. It's otherwise the skills deteriorate.
That's it. Yeah, you need to get a run in.
I don't know what this says about nurture versus nature, but I do like that you fought it with everything you had and then became an incredibly successful author.
It was not on purpose. If I had just, if I had if I had been able to, my vertical leap had been 3 to 4 feet higher.
Yeah, that's all that was holding it.
Then I don't think I would have written any books.
For those who are not watching this, I will only tell you that behind Simon right now, there's not a single trophy, but there's thousands of books.
That is true.
Yeah.
The sad thing is that my basketball career was cut short by injury.
Oh God.
Which it's a tragic story. I was being dropped off at the court by my grandmother, and I was making sure I had my snacks and my sunscreen, sort of dawdling by the car for a little longer maybe than normally, and I felt a sharp pressure on my foot, and I realized that my grandmother had backed the car up over my foot. And so I screamed, Grandma, you're on my foot. And I'll never forget what she said in response. She said, "What?" And so I screamed again, "You're on my foot!" And this played out for quite some time. And she finally backed up, and I sort of collapsed. And I had amazingly no bones broken. I think my bones were so like pliable at that age. But it ended like my summer of basketball.
Yeah, and then you give up a year. You're not going to get it back. The funny thing about having an anxious grandmother, did you actually think it's better not to say anything? Like, if she now thinks that every time she backs up, like she might roll over a foot, I can't give her another thing to worry about. Like, eventually she'll drive off, and that's maybe easier for me. Like, there are people in my life where when something goes wrong, I'm just, I'll just eat it. There's
it was definitely a mistake to tell her what was going on.
So was that the whole summer that you would go down there, or?
No, we would go down. We would go like 3 times a year, and summer would always be like the longest trip, and we would stay for like a couple of weeks. But we would also go during other school holidays.
And what about like the other sort of stereotypical Jewish summer experience? Did you guys go to camps?
Oh yeah, big time. So we went to Camp Winnebago, my brother and I, which was extremely fun. Still friends with people I went to camp with, and you can see a canoe paddle.
Yeah.
Oh, I can.
Yeah, that's not Winnebago era, but my brother and I, like after camp was over, continued to do canoe trips together, like in our 20s, and it was thrilling. I mean, it was an all boys camp. Again, like not officially Jewish, but Jewish enough for me to compete.
Right. It's like how like Greek basketball leagues, every team can only have one American.
Exactly. That's what exactly.
Each team can only have like one or two.
Yeah.
Did you, talk about these trips in the 20s. Was this something, whose idea was it? Was it you or your brother who said, you know what, we as adults should take a canoe trip?
Oh, definitely my brother, because he's just like way more rugged and like tough, and also just like responsible. There's a lot of planning that goes into these trips. You have to make sure you have like enough beans, and like like you have to keep like how many ounces of this and ounces of that. So yeah, he organized it all, and I would go when I was at SNL, like in between every season, I would go on one of these river trips with my brother.
And was it just the two of you?
We would always take 2 friends who had no knowledge of canoeing whatsoever, so that we could seem like we were like expert canoeists. Like, oh no, you have to. What you do is you use your arms to,
Yeah, I like your entire approach. Your entire approach to physical activity is like find people you compare well against.
That's it. Because everything is relative. It's all perspective.
Yeah.
There's no reality. I mean, there's a lot of high-level physicists who believe that there's no such thing even as objective reality.
Right. You're still saying that your basketball career was ended by a car rolling over your foot, when in fact it might have just been reality.
Well, I'm not listening. I'm not listening to that. I can just shut that out.
Right.
I can live in your reality, or I can live in mine.
Sure.
Who's to say which one is accurate?
That's fair.
Did you, where would your brother pick different places every year for the canoe trips?
Yeah, so we made the mistake of like, we're like, okay, well, when we were 14, we were strong enough canoeists to do the Allagash River. So now we're 23. We'll do a higher level river, more treacherous rapids, longer portages, longer distances that you have to carry your gear through the woods. Because surely we've physically advanced since 8th grade. That was a mistake. We ended up just regressing and just repeating like our childhood rivers, and it was really fun. And we still felt like this incredible sense of physical accomplishment. And we'd go through, rapids, and we'd finish off a long day, and we'd be like high-fiving, and then, we would see like 8-year-old Boy Scouts, emerging, just like really arching the vibe. But yeah, it was so fun, and we would we'd sometimes go for like 6-7 nights on the river, and with the exception of the occasional troop of Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. One night I remember we were basically on our own, but yeah, one night we were like asleep, kind of congratulating each other on like a really treacherous day, and then we heard that, and then all of a sudden the silence was broken by a group Taylor Swift sing along from girls who were like too young for the content of some of those songs.
Yeah.
Like it
Oh,
was
right.
not like a middle school. It was like 6-year-old.
I like how you're shifting the narrative here to like it was inappropriate.
Yeah, they should not have been there.
Yeah.
It was a trip for men.
Did you ever take trips with your dad after your parents split up?
We did take trips, but not as many. Like when I really look back, when I think about vacation, I really do think about either me and my brother at camp or my mom taking us somewhere.
Yeah. Were there ever any outlier trips where you'd go somewhere that wasn't Boca Raton? Was there ever like let's go to Disney or let's go out and see the American West?
We went to Venezuela. And the
Okay.
reason why it's kind of interesting is my mother was actually born in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
So it's her parents are, you know, New York City Jews, Brooklyn, but
No.
but they moved to Venezuela in the late 40s. And
Wow.
it was my grandfather had like a fruit canning business where I guess they would just take the fruit there and send it to the US or wherever. And so my mom grew up in Venezuela and we went back to visit her childhood home in Caracas.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Was that a cool trip?
It was really cool. It's like I was like, you know, 9 years old. So I wasn't really aware of like what was happening geopolitically, which was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was more just interested. This sounds made up, but my biggest memory of it was how weird the basketball courts were because the paint was trapezoidal. So instead of it being a rectangle, it was a trapezoid, really thick near the basket, and the idea was to make the game less easy to dominate for big men.
Ah,
Yeah,
interesting.
And that's sort of so. This did not really have a huge impact on my own strategy.
Right.
I think based on our age gap, I was probably in Venezuela. The one time I went to Venezuela is probably around the same time. A friend of mine worked in the State Department, married a Colombian woman, and the wedding was in Bogota. And my parents really didn't want me to go because of the time.
Yes.
And my friend, who again worked for the State Department, was like, it's totally safe. You'll be fine. I went. Obviously, I was totally safe and it was fine. But while I was there, I met a New York Times journalist who was at the wedding. And I was telling him, haha, my parent. And he goes, oh, do they read the New York Times? And I said, yeah, they read the New York Times. And he's like, I wrote a cover story for New York Times Magazine about how this is basically the worst place in the world. And so sure enough, while I was there, my parents read that and immediately were calling me on the phone, telling me to come home.
But for me, it was like, wow, passion fruit juice.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been drinking celery. You've carbonated
exactly.
celery.
Yeah, right, exactly. Huge improvement. So I loved it. Yeah, that was a really like exotic trip. And then but I liked the comfort of Boca Raton. I mean, I was like, I think I could retire here at like 9 years old. Yeah, I could.
There's still time. Would you go out to the beach? Would you spend any time on the beach in Boca?
We would never go to the beach. We would go to the club, which was like tennis and a pool. And you'd sit around the pool and you'd order your celery instead of getting it from the fridge. And you'd meet your grandparents' friends, which was this very interesting thing that, to see this like social scene of people in their 60s and 70s. And they had gossip and they had vendettas, and it was really interesting and entertaining. And I remember thinking, like, from my childhood perspective, I was like, this is the center of the world, like this is, it felt like Wall Street, and it felt like this is where the deals are happening, because I had never seen you never, as a kid, I didn't see grown-ups socializing very often.
Right.
My parents were divorced. There weren't like dinner parties in my home. I wasn't around groups of adults talking a lot. And but sitting around the pool at the Boca Raton Club, it would be like oh, that person thinks he's going to win for Boca Council, but he's going to lose because he didn't get that person's endorsement. I was like, wow, I'm in the room where it's happening. This is amazing.
I will say my summers with my in-laws, there is such a coming and going where no one calls ahead or knocks, or it just, people are coming in and out constantly. And it took me a few years to realize this was not a massive intrusion of privacy. It was more just, oh, we live in a community and we're all part of it and we're just going to treat every house like it's our house. And I'm like, I kind of come around to realizing there's something very charming about that.
It was very sweet. Yeah, it was very social. And then, sadly over the years it thins out as people die or become incapacitated. So that was like, and it was like this it was this sort of this time lapse thing, because you're coming every 3 months or 6 months and you're like, oh, that person is slower, or that person is gone, or that person is, and so it was like you were watching it in fast forward.
Right. Was shuffleboard a thing? It feels like it would be a shuffleboard kind of community. Like what were the older folks occupying their time with? Was it golf and
shuffleboard for sure. But the women would play canasta and mahjong, which were these sort of early 20th century games, which I still cannot comprehend, but they would absolutely go at it, and it was loud and it was boisterous and it was fun to see out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah.
I don't know if there were real rules. Maybe for all I know, it was just like who could shout and slap like the most energetically.
Right.
That's what it felt like. It felt like they were just like having like a table slapping contest, which was cool. I was like, that's exciting. That looks like a fun game.
Yeah.
And
Did you guys ever take a European trip? Was that somewhere the rich boys went?
Yeah, we went to Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Yeah, we went to Switzerland because my mother liked to ski.
Oh, wow.
And that's everything. We would go to Vermont sometimes for skiing. So we went to Switzerland, I think maybe even twice.
You said your mom liked it. Does that mean that you and your brother didn't?
I think my brother liked it better than I did. I struggled. I mean, I don't have a skier's body or a skier's mindset. I think you need both. You need to I think be excited to go down the mountain.
Yeah, it helps.
As opposed to like every single inch of your body, like trying to retain purchase on where you're standing. I had like a mountain goats approach to skiing. I'm just like, I'm going to try really hard to stay put and fight and fight the gravitational pull that is taking me away from safety and into the unknown. But so my brother, and it was like my mom would take my brother on like the real slopes, like the Black Diamonds or whatever. And then she'd come with me down the greens, and I would just, put my skis in the triangle shape and just very slowly inch down.
Yeah.
I also realized, because now I'm doing it a lot with my kids, and I think to myself, well, because I never cared for it when I was young. And I'm like, well, it's still just it's zen to sort of be by yourself. And then I feel like I'm always about to fall when I realize I've stopped thinking about skiing, which also requires some of your mental state,
Yeah. You have to be aware of it. I mean, what was really fun was the chairlift, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that. I don't have a fear of heights, miraculously. I wish I could just, I remember asking if it was all right if I could just loop it around,
Right. Yeah.
Stay up there all day, but they wouldn't let you do that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think Josh will allow us this concession. We took a trip once, you and I, and 3 of our friends, Simon, went to Montreal.
Yeah.
We road trip. This was a summer trip with 3 other SNL writers, Colin Jost, Rob Klein, Eric Kenward. We drove to Montreal without much of a plan. It was like very last minute. And the most memorable thing that happened is we ran out of gas, which was very much Colin Jost's fault.
Well, the most memorable thing to me that happened was 5 minutes before we ran out of gas.
What happened?
That's when Colin said, wouldn't it be, we're really low on gas. Wouldn't it be so funny if we ran out of gas?
Oh, sure enough.
And we ran out of gas on a highway,
Yeah.
a full highway.
Yep.
And the only solution, you and I ran to a gas station.
Yeah, far. I mean,
Yeah. Miles.
Miles, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Through like an 8-lane.
Yeah, like whatever quaintness you're thinking of Montreal, it wasn't that. It was a regular old highway.
Yeah. And we got the gas and we ran back.
And I think when we were running back with a full can of gas, somebody stopped to get it. They drove it we didn't run all the way back. Because I remember on the way there, nobody thought to help us. But I think
because there was just two people running down the side of the highway. Those are
by the way, not in running shoes, not in like in sneakers probably, but not in running shoes.
Yeah, that sounds right. Definitely not shorts or a t-shirt.
The other thing I remember about that trip is we were running late before we ran out of gas. I think we were running late for a dinner reservation that had been hard to get. And we had gone to like a very nice spa. Do you remember this? And we had all come up, and there was this giant glass wall that looked over sort of the spa grounds. And all four of us, save for Colin, had obeyed the rules of when we were going to leave. And then we looked and we saw him just in a robe, just sort of walking around the grass. It was the funniest thing. And we were banging on the glass, like, I feel like in The Graduate, trying to get his attention. And he just was in another world. No sense of the time. Never looked up.
Yeah, Colin's like not somebody you would ever like want to entrust with a thing that like starts at a specific time, like each week. Like if a thing were to start like at 11:30 each week, hypothetically, like a set time, like that just
like it had to be that time.
Yeah, like he's super talented, incredibly funny, but like very smart. But like that's like the one.
Definitely give him a wiggle room job as far as time goes.
Not a thing where it's like at this exact hour, like that would be no one in their right mind would give him power over that.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break and hear from some of our sponsors. This episode of Family Trips is brought to you by Nissan.
Hey, Sufi, let's play a quick game. I'm going to say a word, and we both say the first word it makes us think of at the same time. Ready?
I am ready, Pashi.
All right, first word, cereal. Grape
Killers.
Nuts. All right.
Oh, okay. We thought of different cereals. Okay.
Yeah, that's going to happen, but maybe let's try to lock in. Let's try to mind meld here.
Okay.
Next word, museum. The Louvre.
Gift shop as one word.
Okay. I said the Louvre. You said gift shop. I know we can be better at this. Let's try one more, all right?
Okay.
All right, last one. Rugged. The Nissan Pathfinder Rock Creek, where form meets function with stylish orange contrast stitching and water-repellent seat material.
Whoa. Whoa.
Wow.
I thought you were going to say me.
For rugged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Posh, with the Nissan Pathfinder Rock Creek, you can flex your ruggedness from rocky trails and muddy paths to sandy dunes and snowy roads.
Yeah, flex your ruggedness, Soup.
I will. Stop the laughing. Featuring 18-inch beadlock style wheels and all-terrain tires, plus a tubular roof rack with up to 220 pounds of dynamic capacity for loading up your gear, the Nissan Pathfinder Rock Creek is designed to be aggressive all the way up to the front grille.
And all the while, you can stay connected while you drive with wireless Apple CarPlay, allowing you to listen to unbelievable, life-changing, mind-blowing podcasts and also Family Trips.
Why also never mind. So thanks again to Nissan for sponsoring this episode of Family Trips. Now, go find your path and enjoy the ride along the way. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Can I do the fast part, Posh?
Please.
Intelligent four-wheel drive cannot prevent collisions or provide enhanced traction in all conditions. Always monitor traffic and weather conditions. Cargo and load capacity limited by weight and distribution. Always secure cargo. Heavy loading of the vehicle with cargo, especially on the roof, will affect the handling and stability of the vehicle. Compatible device service and consumer activation and Nissan Connect services. Package required. Use only when safe and legal. Subject to third-party service availability. Apple CarPlay is a trademark of Apple Inc.
That's what it sounds like when you read to your kids.
Yeah, I just want to get to bed. Support for Family Trips comes from Element. Hey, Bashi.
Yeah, Sufi.
Element's back.
Element's back. and better than ever.
You know, Element was one of our early sponsors, and I got the Element packs. I love them. But guess what I saw the other day? Because we still have all our elements, you know? And, well, Lexi, my wife, was drinking them. And you know she doesn't just put anything in her body.
Definitely not.
That body's a temple.
That body's a temple. If she's putting something in there, it means she's done some research and she has given her stamp of approval.
Element helps anyone stay hydrated without the sugar and other dodgy ingredients. The dodgy ingredients my wife's always trying to dodge, found in popular electrolyte and sports drinks.
Element is a zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix born from the growing body of research revealing that optimum health outcomes occur at sodium levels 2 to 3 times government recommendations. Take that, government. Each stick pack delivers a meaningful dose of electrolytes free of sugar, artificial colors, or other dodgy ingredients.
Element is formulated for anyone on a mission to restore health through hydration and is perfectly suited for athletes, folks who are fasting, or those following keto, low-carb, whole food, or paleo diets. Here's some of the people. Posh, you want a list of the people who enjoy Element?
Sure, other than us and your wife?
Sure. Well, she's a mom, and that's one. Exercise enthusiast, she's also that. Heavy sweaters, not that.
That's
Sauna
you.
sitters, yeah, that's me. And those who want a dynamite, no-sugar margarita or mocktail, incorporate Element into their daily routine.
Get your free LMNT Sample Pack with any purchase at drinkelement.com/trips. Also try the new LMNT Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. Try Element totally risk-free. If you don't like it, we'll refund your order, no questions asked. Again, for your free LMNT Sample Pack, go to drinkelement.com/trips. That's drinklmnt.com/trips.
Here we go.
Have you taken your children on anything outdoorsy yet, akin to the canoe trips?
So we're a big agrotainment family.
Keep going.
So we have a 7-year-old and 3-year-old, and we basically go to these farms that are they're. I mean, I don't want to say this too loud because they might be in the next room, but they're not real farms.
Keep going.
But between you and me and the door, they're not real farms. But they seem like real farms. And the kids, you know, they pick up the eggs and they, you know, and they do their chores, which is to like pet the goats. And it's delightful. I don't know what the animals think about what's going on.
Is this an overnight trip? Do you stay at a farm?
Yeah, so we will often like stay at there'll be like a cabin on on like a property, and we'll stay for like a week. And during the day, the kids will put on their overalls and we'll say, "All right, time to do the chores." The animals are counting on you.
Is there someone there to sort of like guide them around and be like, "All right, now let's do this"? It's not just like, "All right, here's a farm and you can have it for a week."
Right. Yeah. No, there's grown-ups watching everything.
Gotcha.
I feel like if I told my kids it's time to get the eggs, they would basically tell me to, you know, go jump in a lake. But if somebody who I told them was a professional farmer asked them to get the eggs, they would be amazing. Do your kids sort of like full attention to someone who you've entrusted or?
It's very much the vibe. Yeah. It makes me feel like I should invest in a hat.
Yeah.
It does a lot, you know, it does a lot in terms of authority.
Who's the best in your family at picking up a chicken?
Oh, good question. Without question, my wife, Kathleen.
Okay.
But she is unbelievable with poultry in general, and birds in general. We were living in the Bay Area for a couple of years. We were at a Starbucks, and a pigeon flew into the glass-walled Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all of these sort of busy tech people, typing, ignoring this flailing bird. Kathleen heroically grabbed the pigeon and released it out of the Starbucks. It was unbelievable. And so, yeah, she's fearless when it comes to birds.
Yeah.
My wife would not go near a person who picked up a pigeon. That would be like she would very quietly go into her contacts and delete Kathleen. Did Kathleen grow up in a sort of more rural, friendly to handle birds area?
So she grew up in Milwaukee,
okay.
but like very much like suburban.
Yeah.
Like like the mall and, school but she grew up near rural areas that she would like trek out to sometimes. And so we just got back from a couple of weeks in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and had this great kind of rural camp experience where we put our 7-year-old in like a kind of 4-H camp.
Yeah.
It was Goat Week, and on Friday we got to see the culmination of that, which was the goat display, where all the kids kind of with varying degrees of success led their goats around in a circle.
Had to be fantastic.
It was a triumph.
Yeah. I mean, smiles all around just from hearing about it. I can't imagine seeing
it. Was the absolute best.
Yeah.
And not easy to walk a goat around in a circle. People might be scoffing at the idea of this, but
well, I actually, Seth, thanks to you, have experience trying to walk a goat, which is that when you were my boss at SNL, you wrote a sketch that involved, I don't remember what the sketch was, but I do remember that the goat was incidental to it.
Yeah.
But you did tell the department heads that a goat was called for. And I was assisting that week. Me and Mulaney were assisting you on the sketch. And the goat did not want to be in the sketch.
No.
Yes.
But it had to be. And it got to a point where me and John were helping the animal trainer shove the goat. The goat had to move like 6 inches to get on camera. And I remember pushing it and the animal trainer saying, I distinctly remember over and over, "Stubborn goat." And I was like, I cannot believe that this is Hollywood.
Well,
this is me and John, and we weren't really pushing it. We were just kind of making noises under
making it look like you didn't want. If Lauren was there, you didn't want to get caught looking like you weren't trying.
Yeah,
so it was
we were like
soft pushes.
It was mainly just watching this animal trainer just curse under his breath and say, "Stubborn goat."
It's a classic. I will say, when it comes to animal wranglers, they will blame their tools. I've never seen the amount to it. The last minute, they're like, "And just FYI, goats can't be trained." Like they always at the last minute tell you. I'm more of a goat bringer.
Well, Seth, your in-laws had a goat.
Yeah, Raisin.
And I feel like maybe because that goat was in your life, you started writing some goat stuff.
I thought, goat material was asked for.
It was a background goat.
Yeah, it was just a background goat. I do remember. I don't remember writing it. I do remember. Yeah, there was like a scene with Jerry Butler where there was a goat that was like got caught halfway between two sets.
Yeah,
it is funny how many times you just ignore the rule of like don't work with children or animals, and you're like, but this could really use an animal.
I mean, the temptation is so strong.
Seth, do you want to tell the story real quick of how Raisin the goat got his name?
Oh yeah, so basically somebody bought a goat to cook. They were going to kill and cook it and brought it over to my father-in-law's house. He immediately laid eyes on this goat, looked into this goat's eyes. By the way, fell in love. He tells the story. I looked at him and fell in love. If you look, a goat's eyes are the worst eyes of all of God's creations. Just devil slits, dead eyes. The only thing, just the worst.
It's like
Yellowish.
A Venezuelan basketball court.
Yeah.
Just trapezoidal.
Yeah, don't they have rectangular pupils?
They do.
Everything about it stinks when you look at a goat. And he fell in love with this goat, and then he basically said, I want to keep the goat, don't cook the goat, I'm going to keep the goat as a pet. And they went inside to get they wanted to get a collar, because obviously nobody's going to kill and eat a goat with a dog collar. And they somehow had a friend's dog named Raisin had died, and they'd ended up with a collar. So they just threw a dead dog's collar around this goat. And then started calling it Raisin, not realizing that eventually, which is what happened, that person came over and not only was shocked to hear that they'd given this raisin, given the name to a goat, but also found out the reason was that it was wearing a dead dog's collar.
That is a Stephen King. That is like, we're right back into Kingland with that.
Yeah, there was probably also a phone number on the back of that tag. So if somebody found the goat, they would call and be like, hey, we found Raisin. You'd be like, what?
Wow.
Our dog?
And then that's the Stephen King. They're like, this is the craziest news. They found Raisin, and now it's a goat.
Can you come get him?
Yeah.
That is horrifying. Yeah, well, yeah, that's like All Quiet on the Western Front when the person's wearing the dead soldier's uniform and they don't tell him.
Yeah.
That's a good move. I think that's one of my favorite moves when you just are somewhere in a battlefield. It's like the Mad Men, right? Like Don Draper. It was just his buddy who got blown up.
That's it. It's
Yeah.
great. You can't beat it.
I mean, it is. I think all of us, and again, we're all happy with our lives. Back of our head, though, we'd love the idea that everybody we know thought we were dead and we got to be a new person.
Yeah. There's a great crime writer named Cornell Woolrich who wrote Rear Window, and he wrote like 10 separate short stories that are that premise. The body is destroyed in various ways. It's like, it was run over by a train, but it's my exact clothes size,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, it was a tornado flung the body out of its clothes, which fit me very well. But he was just addicted to that premise, and I never get tired of it. And it's always, just a Great Depression era person, usually about to blow their brains out. And when they happen upon the perfectly fitting clothes of a corpse,
that's enough purpose to keep on keeping on.
That's
all right,
great.
so Simon, I know you to be one of the, again, you're a fantastic writer. I also know you to be a voracious reader, but I'm curious because as a parent, do you still find time to read over the course of, say, a summer when maybe there's less going on, or because your kids are 7 and 3, is it completely exited your life?
I read all the time. Yeah, I'm still a really big reader.
Great.
I read for hours every day. I love it. I mean, it's also where I get like most of my ideas. So I feel like I'm able to justify it. It's like a loss leader.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I technically didn't write anything for the last 6 hours. I just read this book, but maybe it'll, maybe there are ideas that are gestating. So I kind of let myself off the hook. And I mean, my plan for today is basically to read for this book for hours. I mean,
oh my God, it's a big book. What are you reading now? The Grey War?
The Grey War by Paul Fussell. Paul, an incredible writer. So grim and so mean.
Do you have a reading chair? Do you have a place that you read consistently?
I usually, I mean, not to sound lazier, but I usually read while lying down on the couch.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it's like a drink in hand, like a water within reach.
And then people like quietly and from the other room point at you and go, before his grandmother rolled over his foot, you'd never believe it now.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. He was on track.
This wasn't his path,
Yeah.
This is plan B.
Exactly.
It is always wonderful to talk to you. You're gonna be out in the city this fall.
Yes, I'm really
Great.
excited to see you there.
I'm very excited to see you. I'm very happy you're gonna be back. We miss you. You belong here.
Thank you.
I have a little row of books at the top of my stairs, and I forget who it was. Maybe it was like a Marie Kondo thing, but they were like, get rid of a lot of your books, and you should have books like one set of books that you just sort of really like. And I've got Your Ant Farm was up in there, and I was just reading some of this morning. It's still, it's so
awesome.
funny.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that it sparks joy.
It really does. It does. I mean, I read like 3 of them. They're such quick pops, and it was a delight back then. And it had been a while since I'd opened it up, and I did this morning, and it's just great.
Oh, thank you. Really.
There are 2 things I would say that even as a sketch writer, you are a merciless cutter. Would you say that is true of you?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. And sort of a merciless cutter. And I've always been so impressed because even your short story writing, I'm like, God, this is so dense. Every line's funny. And I know there's a version 3 times as long that Simon started with that was equally funny. But he was just condensed it down to this perfect piece of writing.
I think part of that is being like the younger sibling.
Yeah.
Is just like, I have very little time to get everybody's attention. And so I need to be very succinct and very to the point. But I like when I'm writing a short story, I'm constantly imagining the reader just being surrounded by a million other distractions and screens and the full corpus of 21st century pornography. And I'm like, they've got my book in their hands. Like somehow, like a gust of wind blew my physical book into their hands. And I have like 5 seconds to hook them and keep them reading. And so I'm just like frantically trying to get them to want to turn the page.
Yeah.
The other thing I always think about this as well, because you, John Mulaney, America Sawyer, you wrote a lot together, and you were 3 children in the 90s. Josh and I are children of the 80s. And you so lovingly, you were so inspired by the 90s and genuinely loved 90s culture.
Yes.
And you wrote about it in a way that was both incredibly funny and enjoyable for me to consume, and also never once made me wish I was a child of the 90s.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of our references were very baffling to audience members and the other writers. We did one sketch, which it's unbelievable that I'm going to be talking about this right now, but I am, I guess, called Jazz or Alzheimer's.
Oh, yeah. Really funny. Jazz or Alzheimer's.
And it's a game show. And the idea is you are going to watch a sitcom, a family sitcom, where an elderly character who you've never met is introduced, and you have to guess whether it's going to be a very special episode about jazz or a very special episode about Alzheimer's. So it's a sketch built around the famous, very well-known trope of very special early 90s children's programming.
Yeah.
It played to silence, and that was a sketch where my Spartan minimalism was not on display. I believe that sketch was 30 pages long.
Well, yeah, sometimes even the most brutal, unforgiving cutter of sketches has an idea that just needs 30 pages to explain it. Premise alone.
Yeah, it's like Of Human Bondage has to be 800 pages in order to...
I'm putting that down. You know, that Jazz or Alzheimer's might have to be thrown into the mix for Second Chance Theater. Just because
wow.
Yeah.
You're going to need another half hour.
We'll call it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun. I also remember it being expensive. I remember there were like multiple sets because we had to recreate...
Right,
I mean,
like a sitcom set.
Nobody built, I mean, just to be clear for anyone listening, nobody built these sets.
It died before it even got to that.
Yes, way before, yeah. But yeah, and if we had made it, it would have been a real undertaking.
All right, before we let you go, Josh is going to ask you our speed round of questions all of our guests get.
Okay.
Sweet.
Here we go, Simon. You can only pick one of these. Is your ideal vacation relaxing, adventurous, or educational?
Oh, it's so embarrassing. Educational.
That's not embarrassing.
That's the truth.
What is your favorite means of transportation? Train, plane, automobile, boat, bike, walking?
Definitely train.
Train. What's the best train you've taken?
The best train from London to Bath.
Yeah.
Like just the normal train that you took from, like there wasn't particularly fancy, but it was beautiful. Actually, London, Bath, or London to Edinburgh.
Okay.
Great.
If you could take a vacation with any family, alive or dead, real or fictional, other than your own family, what family would you like to take a family vacation with?
Ooh, wow. That's a really good question. I guess Kingsley and Martin Amis, just because you know that the drinks will be good.
Agreed. If you had to be stranded on a desert island with one member of your family, who would it be?
Oh, it would have to be my brother. I mean, as much as I love my wife, like I want to survive. Like I don't want to die.
Yeah, right.
I
want to get home to her.
Yeah, exactly. And I need somebody to fish and like make the fire and
Right.
Give me an oar.
Yeah, and he's 6 feet tall, so he can stand on the beach.
Oh yeah, he can reach the highest coconuts. Yeah.
You're from New York City proper?
Yes.
Would you recommend New York City as a vacation destination for a family?
Yeah, I think so. I think I genuinely would. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And then Seth has our finishing questions.
Simon, have you been to the Grand Canyon?
I have not.
Do you want to go?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and there's a wait list, right? And to go, or a wait list to take the river through it.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
to stay at the bottom at Phantom Ranch, it's hard to get those spots.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
going down the river, I'm not sure what it takes, but
Well, my feeling is I have flown over it.
Yeah.
So isn't that the same exact experience?
The best is this is yet another thing you have in common with Leslie Jones, who said the same thing.
That's great.
The two of you, once again, are completely in lockstep. I've sort of, staked out my position, which is very similar to yours, Simon. And one of our producers just sent me, pictures. You're missing out of the Grand Canyon. And I look at the pictures and I don't think I am.
No, the only place I really want to go is to see the ruins of the Titanic in like a small submersible.
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
But like one they built quickly.
That's
like
what I
new
want to do.
technology.
It feels similar to that. I mean, it feels like, why go to this very remote, scary cliff that best case scenario, I just stay there and stare down into the abyss. I mean,
yeah, I mean, you're singing my song, buddy. All right. I really hope to see you. Let me know when you're back in the city. It is great to see you, buddy. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Great to
Thanks,
see you.
Simon.
Lots of fun. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Seth.
Family trips with the Myers brothers. Family trips with the Myers brothers. Here we go.
Thanks again to Nissan for sponsoring this episode. Learn more at nissanusa.com.